This video is brought to you by True Tales of Buried Treasure, the largest collection of old treasure magazines in the West. On our website, you can search for individual treasure stories by region, or buy our original magazines themselves. To pay us a visit, please click on the link in the description. Enjoy. Feeling the dry and preserving air of the Arizona desert, listening to the silence that seems always on the verge of being broken, and seeing the barbed saguaro sentries standing guard, it's not hard to believe the ghost stories one sometimes hears. If the ghost story involves a Texan's hidden treasure, all the better, and if the stories are verified by others, things get even more interesting. When the tale is fresh, with today's telling, it's worth paying close attention, especially if the storyteller, a local Mexicano, claims to know where the treasure is. Many stories circulate about the Treasure of El Tejano, and anyone who takes the time to visit the archives at the University of Arizona will find that these stories share many similarities. The best story comes from Alejandro Heredia, who lives on the outskirts of Tucson. His tale combines all the elements of the other versions, and he not only knows where the treasure is, but also what has happened to those who have encountered it. If you stay around Cerro Delgado until after dark, you might hear El Tejano riding his horse down to the waterhole. Many ranchers and cowboys in these parts have heard his spirit on this trail. They always hear him after dark, but never in the daytime. I myself have heard him 3 times. He rides through the rocks and mesquite thickets, and after dark, he heads down to the water to drink. You can hear the hoofbeats, the horse chomping the bit, and El Tejano's spurs jingling. When he reaches the water, the hoofbeats stop, and the spurs fall silent. Yes, I have heard him 3 times. El Tejano was a bold, ruthless bandit who roamed this part of the country about 100 years ago. He held up and robbed stagecoaches at various places. One of his favorite spots for holdups was Picacho Pass, northwest of Tucson. Another was the pass at Cerro Delgado for the stage to Sasabe. There were other locations too. He had a partner who stayed in town and informed him when a stagecoach was coming through with money in the strongbox. Eventually, he amassed so much treasure that he had to hide it, and people have been searching for it ever since. This bandit was as crafty and sneaky as he was bold. He sometimes had his horse's shoes put on backwards so that the posse would trail him in the wrong direction. Some locals called him the Cat because he was as elusive as a wildcat. He was a formidable man, and that's why they named Cat Mountain after him, because he robbed the stage there and sometimes wore a mask that looked like a cat's face. El Tejano sent a man into town to have his horse shod. The sheriff suspected the man, so they caught him and threatened, "If you don't show us where he is, we are going to kill you." The man led the police to a thicket of bamboo cane near the Santa Cruz River south of Tucson. There they found a man asleep in the thicket, and the police shot him with a shotgun meant for bears. The man was mortally wounded and should have been dead, but he raised up, pulled his pistol and said, "I am much of a man." This scared the posse, so they went back to town for more help. When they returned about 2 hours later, they found him dead in the thicket. So the spirit of El Tejano still rides this trail, and you can hear the jingling of his spurs and the hoofbeats of his horse as he rides down to the water. His spirit will keep riding, doing penance for his misdeeds, until someone finds all of his buried treasure and releases him from his penance. El Tejano rode a black horse, but he also had a gray one for a change. Once there was a Yaqui man who used to go to Cerro Delgado to cut wood. Several times he saw a black horse ride down to the waterhole and then disappear. One time, I worked with a carpenter who found a lot of treasure in a cave around Cerro Delgado. While the carpenter was in the cave gathering the treasure, the ghost of El Tejano appeared and pointed at the carpenter, saying, "You take all of it or none." This frightened the carpenter greatly. Knowing he couldn't take all of the treasure, he hurried out of the cave and went home. He died 3 days later from a fever and chills. Another time, a cowboy riding the range came upon a cave. Curious, he went inside and found a treasure. He began filling the pockets of his chaps with gold pieces. Suddenly, the ghost appeared and in a loud voice said, "All or nothing." Terrified, the cowboy began taking the gold out of his pockets, knowing he couldn't take it all. He then ran out of the cave and rode away. About a week later, he was out riding with some other cowboys. While they were camped, he asked to borrow a rifle to hunt a rabbit. They heard a shot, and when he didn't return, they went to look for him. They found him dead, with a bullet hole in his head. He had shot himself. When they searched his body, they found 2 of El Tejano's gold pieces in his pocket, which he had failed to remove when he was in the cave. Back in the 20s, a Yaqui who lived in Twin Buttes sometimes came home with lots of money. One time in 1925, he came to Tucson and took some of us to Cerro del Gato, where he showed us a big crack in the rocks. It was said that El Tejano used to drop his money into the crack, so that if he ever needed it, he could blast the crack open and get his money. We blasted some of the rocks away, but found no money. I think the treasure is still there, but the hole needs to be blasted out more. Other tales generally agree that the treasure is at Picacho Pass, or near Cerro del Gato. The storytellers also concur on the dire consequences for those who find the treasure, but cannot take all of it. If the legends of Tejano's treasure were merely ghost stories, there might be no need to search. However, treasure hunters have pursued riches based on far less reliable information than Alejandro's story. Backing up the legends are solid facts about the man who became the ghost. His name was William Brazelton, and he terrorized the Tucson and New Mexico area in the 1870s by robbing stagecoaches. Brazelton posed as a respectable worker in a livery stable when he wasn't relieving stagecoaches of their gold. He had a friend, Dave Nemitz, who provided information about shipments and schedules. It was the same friend who betrayed Brazelton to the Tucson sheriff, Sheriff Chabelle, leading to Brazelton's ambush near the Santa Cruz River. The bandit's body was displayed for a time so that citizens could get a look at him. That the ghost of Tejano and Brazelton are one and the same has already been verified. Newspaper accounts of Brazelton's capture indicate that the treasure is still waiting to be found somewhere in the Tucson area. But remember Alejandro's warning about the gold: take all or nothing. Thanks for watching. If you'd like to read the original article or purchase the magazine from which it was taken, please check out our website, truetalesofburiedtreasure.com.